Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, double honors, ales and apostles of Great Millstone who are teaching this truth with sincerity. And shout out to Yakibs out there in four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatum. So at the end of another week, and like everything else, so the memorandum of understanding has been going on for about a week, but yet Israeli state has still not pulled out of Lebanon. Or removed its forces from Syria, or stopped their demolishing of buildings and terrorizing people in Syria, and of course Gaza and the West Bank. Nope, because they're not going to stop, because Israeli state says, no, we will continue. Nobody tells us what to do, right? That the U.S. doesn't command, and you got this pretense of Donald Trump and King Bibi not getting along on the scale of things, but that's just about as real as Joe Biden and Donald Trump not agreeing on stuff. It's about as real as the so-called elections, right? And speaking of elections, well, they managed to get in an Amalekite, pretty much a Israeli leader into Colombia. Yeah, there's been a regime change in Colombia without ever having to fire a shot. All you have to do is meddle in their elections. So now you got someone else loyal to the Israeli state. So this takeover of Caribbean countries, is, he said he was going to have a peaceful transition with Cuba, and then, of course, he was going to look at Mexico, and he wants Canada and Greenland. You know that the Israelis are behind it, because Donald Trump is 1,000% Israeli state. Israel owns him, and I'm, of course, talking about Amalek, the Lisa flock. They own him. But more than that, though, they just used what you already know as due, and a lot of people think that due is just something made up. That's a conspiracy theory, right? But all of a sudden, there was a 7.1 earthquake and a 7.5 after earthquake in Venezuela. That's killed quite a few, and that's, just it, It's not a coincidence, because they used the same thing against Turkey and Syria, towards the end, before Bashar al-Assad was ousted. By, of course, Hayat al-Sham, which was the proxies working with the Israeli state and the U.S., to have regime change in Syria. So like everything else, so they already got their regime change in Venezuela, but of course, who's going to show up in the military? I mean, on the very same day, Donald Trump says, oh, we want to help. We're going to do all this to restore Venezuela, but he ain't doing anything for you, Yeah, America first. He seemed to really put Israeli interests and everybody else's interests first. You see, like everything else, so the things are being shaken up. The Most High is shaking everything like the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 branches thereof, right? Which it tells you that in Isaiah chapter 17, right? When the Israeli state, gets destroyed, as well as Syria getting destroyed, right? Because, they're talking a lot about the Samson option, right? And an imminent false flag coming. They've been talking a lot about that the Israeli state's going to try to do some sort of 9/11 type of false flag to draw America back into the war against Iran, because they're not happy, on the scale of things, right? Of course, like everything else, though, Donald Trump's trying to act like, oh, the war is over, there's this memorandum of understanding, while threatening to bomb Iran again, because it's not going the way he planned it, right? All on the shit show, right? The shit just keeps on rolling downhill. Why? Because the Most High is guiding it. You see, like everything else, though, the Third World War is drawing quickly, right? It's drawing nigh. The day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, is near in the Valley of Decision. And then in this Valley of Decision, you have the least of the flock drawing them out. And that's just it. You see, they're going to be looking to Russia very soon. Russia's going to play its role very shortly here. But you got a lot of other things going on, right? You got a lot of censorship going on, right? A famine of the word is around the corner too. And they're killing the dollar on purpose, trying to usher in the MOTB. And all that's happening at the same time. But these psychopaths, these Israelis, man, they want the U.S. to use nuclear weapons against Iran, or they will. That's what some of them people in the Israeli state are saying, is that, well, if you don't use nuclear weapons, we will. Because like everything else, though, Trump refused to send troops into Iran, especially after the humiliation of the C-130 planes getting totally destroyed as well. No invasion could ever happen in Iran because Iran's too well armed. The weak are saying that they are strong, because like everything else, though, a lot of the eastern countries support Iran, especially China and Russia, and so they have the intelligence there. And not to mention, they were able to find every one of the U.S. bases. In fact, the Pentagon was just saying that they could never rebuild those bases again. That's how badly destroyed that they were from Iran. They're not giving the full scale on how many deaths there were in that either. They're just making you believe that there was less than 200 that were killed in that war. But there was a lot more killed in that war. They're just not telling you, Of course not. They don't tell you much of anything, right? You're on a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know that, But everybody knows, though, that, hey, Iran hit back, and they hit back hard, taking out everything that attacked them. Just pretty much, though. Even Bashar al-Assad had warned about repercussions. If Syria were to fall, there'd be stronger repercussions because he's not the only player in the region, meaning that there are those much stronger than him. So yeah, Bashar al-Assad, he had fallen, and he was ousted, but yet at the same time, though, look at how the Israeli state moved towards Iran, and all hell broke loose, right? Last year, they attacked Iran not long after the re-election of Donald Trump, So pretty much so, they went in and they said they were going after the nuclear facilities along with the U.S. And then Iran hit back, and then you're back up to just the recent war as of February 28, I believe, February 27, 28, that they launched a war of terror against Iran, and that lasted for 2 months straight. But, it's not just a war with Iran. You see, a bigger war is happening. The Third World War had already launched. Just that the finale of it, is going to be the end of Babylon and the end of the Israeli state, the end of Esau Edom, because once those missiles begin to fly, that's the end of it. They'll reach one end of the earth to the other. And it talks about that in quite a few of the scriptures. Isaiah 17 goes into it as well. That at the same time when Syria, Damascus falls, so does the Israeli state. And that's on that side of it. And then you have Babylon the Great being destroyed, because Basra is another term for Babylon, and that gets consumed by fire. You see, a nuclear war is around the corner, and, it's inevitable. But you got a lot of division, right? You got false prophets out there teaching you that the MOTB is something else, that it's plantation Christianity, or it's sleeping with the white woman, or it's, an embargo, right? We heard about the embargo, that using the federal printed money is the mark of the beast, or that it's sin. Or here's an even funnier one: Seventh-day Adventists claim that Sunday worship is the mark of the beast. Yeah, that's what they claim, that and the Catholic Church has been doing that for years, right? So all these people that were in the Catholic Church can't repent, right? Because they have the MOTB. You see, it's none of those things. It's an implant that you can't remove once you've been implanted with it, because you've sworn your allegiance to the beast, And that image of the beast is Esau Edom, is the infrastructure of Esau Edom, is this system, It's not Cesare Borgia, even though, that's the image of Esau, and it's the image of these Borgias, better known as the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, because if you look at Jacob Rothschild, or not Jacob Rothschild, what's the other one? David Rothschild looks just like Cesare Borgia. Yeah, I believe that's Cesare Borgia in the regeneration. He looks exactly like him, you see, because Esau kept changing his surname quite a lot, from the Borgias to the, to the Rockefellers, to the Rothschilds, all those names, Oppenheimers, they're all the same, and they're the same banking elites that control everything, right? You think Donald Trump's in charge? No, he's just a puppet. You think King Bibi's in charge? He has more say than Donald Trump does, but no, they get their commands from something much higher, because there's the elite bankers that control everything. They own all the money, and that's the elite royal family, right? But, at the same time, though, what's happening, though, is that the Most High, is use his prophets to get the message out, and the message has been out for quite some time, and then the end shall come, right? When we are no longer out here teaching, because he's going to remove his prophets, A famine of the word will come, because look at all the things that are happening worldwide. Eventually they're going to shut this down. There's going to be lockdowns, especially if the system crashes, and boy, that's coming down quickly, right? There's shortages everywhere, and it's going to increase. Everything's going to intensify very soon. Things are getting amped up, you can consider that each year when Apostle Tahar coins a new title for what the year is called, yet all the other titles that were previously there yet seem to amp up too. The year of turn-up, you had the year of prophecy. You had that one twice, because I believe that there was a year of prophecy in 2018 and then in 2020. So year of prophecy, a year of sellouts, right? This is a year of apostasy and great sellouts, right? So you're going to see more and more sellouts, right? You're going to see false doctrines taught everywhere. Oh, and then you had the year of charagma, right? Well, the charagma will come. The charagma, it's coming, It's June. And at the very beginning of this month, there was a man bragging about receiving the MOTB in the forehead. Yeah, receiving a brain chip and all the things that it could do. All of its limitless possibilities that it could do. Just bragging about it. And then China announced that they have it out commercially. So they beat Neuralink, with it. So, like everything else, though, there's going to be a greater push. And that's exactly what Apostle Tahar was saying on down. There's going to be a great push for it. MOTB may not be mandated this year, but it could be. But we're going to see a great push for it, though. Digital IDs, digital identification. Yeah, you see that the digital ID thing overseas, man. You can't even have a VPN because you have to show your identity just for that. And VPN were meant for virtual private networks, meaning that to be able to surf the net, but you can't do that under the guise of protecting children, right? Protecting children, kind of like they protect children over here from the Epstein files, right? The Epstein files, that's the biggest blackmail that King Bibi has over Donald Trump, right? That he's going to release the Epstein files if Donald Trump doesn't follow the line, which would explain why he's threatening Iran again, right? Oh, well, we'll just bomb the hell out of them if they don't capitulate, right? Because guess what? Iran did close the strait, even though they're saying that the strait is open. Yeah, but anyone not getting authorization from the IRGC is not going to be able to pass. So guess what, though? Those tankers really ain't moving, except for the ones that have permission. And like everything else, though, the Israeli state hasn't pulled out of Lebanon, so this is a memorandum of understanding. It ain't going nowhere. Not this time, no. You don't get to just say, oh, you got a ceasefire and then just keep on firing and then expect others to hold the deal. Expect a rounding military response very shortly here. And then, of course, you have Saudi Arabia threatening right back, saying that if they were to attack Israel, that Saudi Arabia would get involved. You see how this whole thing is erupting? Yeah, that's all around the corner. World War III is around the corner. So the MOTB push is going to happen. You see how that's all falling in line? And you got earthquakes in diverse places, right? Venezuela just had gotten and it doesn't matter how they get it, whether it's a direct energy weapon or not. It just means that it's still happening in diverse places. Yeah, because the sword is the most highest weapon. And Esau is that sword. He's Lucille, if you will, in terms of Walking Dead, he's Lucille, and he's going to have his way with you. The Most High is going to have his way with you using Esau to do it. So how much more, right? Earthquakes in diverse places, famines, pestilences. Yeah, they're engineering a famine, right? Because you're not getting the fertilizer. They're manufacturing this. Oh, the elites, they're eating well. And guess what? The men of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahushai, will also eat during this time period, right? But others are going to be starving to death, because like everything else, so this is going to be a worldwide event. You already know there's shortages everywhere because of the fertilizer shortages. And then the energy, yeah. There's more and more complaints about water running out because, of course, these AI data centers are taking all the water. So you got that as well. Matthew chapter 24, verse 4, and it reads, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am anointed, and shall deceive many. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." So in other words, not time yet, but these things are the beginning of sorrows. So that's the time frame that we're in. For nation shall rise against nation. Yeah, civil unrest, civil uprisings. And kingdom against kingdom. Yeah, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, they're even calling for the removal of Donald Trump. You know, you hear about this all the time. You got a lot of fake assassination attempts, all kinds of shit going on, right? And you got a lot of people that really do hate his guts. He ain't beloved, that's for sure. And there shall be famines and pestilences, earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. And then what's going to happen in the midst of all this? Well, like everything else, though, with AI and everything else, they'll be able to use it to, you know, of course, bring up false accusations against us, right? False accusations have been happening for quite some time, but they're going to become even more so. They're going to use AI to make it look like you conspired, you know, because again, it's controversy what we're talking about. We're saying we're the Israelites when you got those bastards over there saying that they're the Israelites. So how much more? You know, and not to mention, you know, they've already admitted that the Israelis are, you know, Mossad has been spying on everybody for a long time. So they're going to use everything against us. They're going to come at us with everything. Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted and shall kill you, right? They'll bring you before trial and they'll execute you. And you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake, you know. That is claiming to be the Israelites of Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, you know, because that is the namesake, having the names Yahweh, Yahweh Shai. And then many will be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another. Yeah, because like everything else, so there's going to be chaos everywhere. Everybody's going to be turning against each other. Many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And that's what this year is, the year of apostasy and of sellouts. We're going to see a lot of Judas Iscariot. You know, not just the bigger ones that we know about, but lots of people that you thought was a part of your camp, you know, that you thought was a brother teaching. And the next thing you know, they all of a sudden, you know, got information and then they bring charges against you, right? Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Yeah. You know, everybody's going to turn against each other. Yeah, you think that you got something strong with your neighbors and all that, they're going to turn against you, you know. I mean, there's a lot of backbiting that's going to go on. It's going to get worse, you know. Everybody's going to turn against each other, right? Because like everything else, though, when that system crashes, you know, and they see that you've got it, that you've got a means to survive, they're going to steal it from you. Because this devil came in as a thief, you know, and he's going to go out as a thief, right? Steal, kill, and destroy. You know, and try to conquer as many as he can, you know. But like everything else, though, Yahweh Shai and the angels will be coming, and the elect are going to be protected during that time period, see? Like everything else, some of us will have great powers to be able to overcome. Others of us will be cast into prison, you know, to be martyrs, you know. Yeah, we don't know how that's going to turn out, but we definitely know that, you know, from both sides of it. But yet at the same time, though, we know that the Spirit always lives on. You know, and if you're part of his elect, even though you might die in the flesh on this side, guess what though? You come back in the kingdom anyways, and you get to be part of the first fruits. So that's why we do this thing diligently, week in, week out, you know. Now I found a way to come out twice a week, you know, just, you know, modifying everything, because like everything else though, you know, there's only a short time before all this eventually gets shut down. You see how close we are. We see that, you know, they're saying that they're going to run out of oil soon, and you already see that the strait really has not reopened to the west, you know, because Israeli state, well, they're not going to allow it, you know. They're not going to withdraw from Lebanon at all, you know, so they really are the ones that pretty much, in order to usher in a new world order, they would have to bring down the old world order, right? You know, where the U.S. is no longer the dominant. Well, you see that happening. The Chinese yuan outranks the dollar. The petrodollar has no more weight. And see, that's going to cause a lot of people to turn against each other, right? Because the dollar, pretty much, though, it ain't the same as it used to be, right? Yeah, $20 an hour used to sound pretty good, but, you know, and that was great if you had that in the 80s, but $20 an hour ain't really shit, you know, when the dollar ain't really worth that much at all. You know, and you see the price of everything going up, you know, because the gas prices, yeah, they might have dropped a little, but they're going back up again. They already said they're going to go back up again, you know, because, again, it's a teeter-totter effect, but like the domino effect, this whole thing is about to come crashing down like a stack of dominoes, you know, and once you push the first domino, all the rest of the dominoes fall. This place has been falling apart from within, because it's been a place divided. And a kingdom divided against itself will not stand, So we're in the times now that were spoken of in the prophecies, because we know that Isaiah 19 is really talking about this Egypt, not the ancient Egypt, but the new one. So we got a fierce king and cruel lord that rules over us, right? And you can definitely say that King Bibi has more say than Donald Trump does. But either way, though, what has been shown? Well, that pretty much, though, he already said it, that he doesn't worry about the average person working day and day. He said that the only thing he cares about is whether Iran has a nuclear weapon or not. He sounds like a broken record with, oh, they can't have a nuclear weapon. But he doesn't care about the hard-working people, right, that make up this place, because he knows who he is, He's with the Israelis, and everybody knows that. And everybody knows that he's a pedophile, too. He's a pedophile that pretty much hasn't received judgment. But that's what King Bibi holds over him in this shit show of things, right? They'll never tell on themselves, even though everybody knows about it. They don't tell on themselves. Just like 9/11, the people really responsible for 9/11, those dancing Israelis. Yeah, you might see video footage, but they were never brought before court. Everybody else was accused of it, right? They were looking for a guy in a cave that they could never find. And then all of a sudden, during the re-election of Barack Obama, they found him, But you never did see them do the body, get rid of the body. Not like you did with Saddam Hussein. So pretty much so, it was a dog and pony show for years, Osama bin Laden, he was hiding here, he was here. He was over here. No, he's over here, But the people really responsible for 9/11, they never seen it. Nope. The dancing Israelis, no, they never were questioned about it. Building 7, they even admitted on TV that they demolished that building, and that no missile hit it, and that it wasn't a plane that crashed into it. So, how much more, right? The burden of Egypt, which is modern day Egypt, talking about Babylon. Behold, the Most High rideth upon a swift cloud and shall come into Egypt. How is he coming into Egypt? Well, he's going to return. Yahushua and the angels, right? And the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst thereof. It's talking when the nuclear destruction comes and Yahushua and the angels show up. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. And you see that now. You see the divide. And everyone shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone shall fight against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. So pretty much so. All hell's about to break loose. A time, an unprecedented time. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof. Pretty much so. People ain't going to be looking at Egypt. And guess what? I think that false flag probably will be on the 4th of the July. What better time for the Israelis to concoct something, right? Yeah, because they're planning to do a false flag to get everybody into this war. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hands of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. And well, we believe him to be Nero 47. Nero Caesar, and the number of his name is 666. Yeah, you find out his geometric score is 603, right? Nero Caesar, which we believe him to be in the regeneration of Donald J. Trump, So, that through the policies and everything else, and the raising of tariffs, and just the stable coin he wants to bring in, that, most likely underneath him, he's going to be the one to actually mandate, because again, he's that fierce king and cruel lord. And waters shall rise up for the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up. What's that talking about? Well, that's talking about a famine, right? That's talking about, running out of water shortages, right? Well, these AI data centers seem to be stealing a lot of the water. And that turns the rivers shall fall away, and the brokers of defense shall be emptied and dried up, and the reeds and the flaggers shall wither, meaning that there won't be any mirth left. Well, you can see that indeed AI is taking all the jobs, and there really is no more work for those in Egypt anymore. So like everything else, though, they're going to get everybody on that universal basic income, and food shortages. The government's going to run the food banks and the grocery stores. And eventually, everybody's going to have a device in them in order to be able to even commerce in there, right? Nobody's going to be able to commerce without it, you know, causing all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their hand or in their forehead, that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of its name. Meaning that pretty much so, if you haven't been chipped in, if that's another way to put it, if you haven't been chipped in, you ain't getting anywhere. You know, you're not going to be able to commerce at all. You're not going to get your commodities. You're not going to get your welfare. You're not going to get your Social Security, because everything's moving towards that system. The digital dollar, the digital wallet, you know, the stable coin. Yeah, you're going to have it, you know, or else you're just not going to be able to survive. But guess what? The Most High is going to make a way for his people to survive, because we shall be kept from that hour of temptation, meaning that we won't be tempted to get it. Some of us will be martyred and put to death for not taking it, and others of us, you know, we're going to triumph over it. We're going to get over that mark, you know, because we're not going to accept it, you know. So like everything else, though, that the day of the hour of temptation is coming, the day and the hour, and the Third World War is coming quickly. And you can definitely see, though, that things are about to be turned up. We're in the times of Jacob's trouble, the things that were spoken of in Matthew 24. And we're going to see Russia play a more huge role. This is an exciting time to be alive. But like everything else, though, very soon there's going to be a cry for wine on the streets, because we won't be out here teaching when all hell breaks loose. You know? You could hardly find us even during 2020 when, you know, all the cities were locked down. You had to stay indoors. Yeah, we were still doing lessons, but you weren't finding us on the streets. So how much more when they shut down the internet? You know, when they, you have to have, in order to have access, you have to have digital identity. And this digital identity, as Apostle Tahar calls it, the digital all, is having the implant, to be implanted with the device, which is the MOTB. So it's coming. We warn you not to take the MOTB. That if you do, you will be cast into the lake of fire, you know, before the angels of the Most High, you know, and that is when the nuclear destruction comes. So can't say we didn't warn you. We told you everything. You know, Great Millstone had the 100% truth. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that, I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abab Abal, Brakatum Yehofolek. They're going to do something really quick. And like everything else, though, well, we're not going to be caught off guard. Shalom.